Kia ora everybody. This is part 2 of Fijians and Melanesians and Israelites. So this segment is kind of more into customs, culture, relating that back to the Bible and stuff like that, and with some oral history as well. So in our next slide, so we've got some information to go through, but we're going to go back and forth on to these pictures to give an illustration, a picture to understand. But this is called the Nananga Stone Formation, and it's found in Upper Tholo Navosa and parts of Naita City, which is Wainimala, and I think that's in Viti level, I think, which is the main island. And looking from left to right, we can see how, and with further information in the next slide, we see how the dimensions, like the proportions and the directions that the Nananga sacred stone formation is actually pretty much the exact same of what we find of the diagram of the tabernacle found in Exodus from between chapters like 26 and 32, something like that, of the description of how God commanded Moses to build the tent of witness. So we go to the next slide, which will give some information on it. I just found this on Facebook. So but this is from a brother that's done a lot of research into this same kind of topic that I'm bringing out to for Yah's glory, and so his people can be woken up to who they are in spirit and in truth. So reading this, it says the Nananga stone formation were mainly found in Upper Tholo Navosa and parts of West Naita City, Wainimala. The stone formation is called Nananga, and the secret rites carried out in the Nananga were called the Mbaki. These people were the original settlers of Tholo Navosa and were called the Koi Vunavunga, known as Tavalala today, before the second migration of Roko Tumbuna, the patriarch of the Noikoro people, Navosa. The Koi Vunavunga people who practiced such secret rites were also called and recorded by white historians as from Nagawagawa area. Some of these Nagawagawa people lived in caves, and one particular cave was Nagwagwa, sorry for my bad pronunciation, Nagwagwa cave, where they found Hebrew writings etched in the wall. This cave findings was highlighted and published in Fiji Times 23rd of November 2017. I think we have that later on too. Mystery cave writing. The Nanga and Baki rites were associated not only with crops, the presentation of first fruits called Isevu, and you find that festival in Leviticus 23 commanded to the 12 tribes of Israel, and fertility, but also with initiation rituals for priests and youths, which is also found in the book of Leviticus and Exodus. The initiation of youths, like circumcision, which admitted them to manhood, as what the historians claimed was always a great annual festival the youth looked forward to. Other Mbaki rites included seeking power and favors from God to win battles against enemies. That's biblical as. Also, a group of men were invited by the Mbete priest into the Nananga demarcated zone to sing and worship for some rituals carried out within. The Nanga measured about 100 feet long by 50 feet wide. It spanned from east and west through orientation was not exact. The upright stones forming the walls were 18 inches to 3 feet in height. As we could read from the above and see the attached pictures, The Nananga ritual of practices and rites sort of resembled Hebrew practices and rites. The Nananga stone formation was rectangular in shape and were exactly the same ratio as the tent of tabernacle, that is 2 to 1. Tent of the tabernacle were 100 cubit long and 50 cubit wide, and the Nananga 100 feet long and 100 feet long and 50 feet wide. These are the other similarities between the tent of tabernacle and the Nananga. That is, the entries to both are from the east. Both are separated into 3 compartments within. They have altars of burnt offering. And the Nananga, they offered pig as burnt offering. The tent of tabernacles had an outer court, the holy place, and the most holy place. Exodus 30:17-21. The Nananga stone formation was rectangular in shape and were exactly the same ratio as the tent of tabernacle, that is 2 to 1. The tent of tabernacle 100 cubit long and 50 cubit wide, and the Nananga 100 feet long, and 50 feet wide. It's kind of repeating there a bit, apologies. So jumping down to the third paragraph, it says, in the Nananga, the third compartment or the west part is the most holiest, which mirrors exactly the tent of tabernacle. The eastern part of the Nanga was called the Lomini Nanga, or middle Nanga, while the western portion was Nanga Tabu Tabu, or Nanga Tambu Tambu, or Holy of Holies. While writing this today, 28th of December 2021, I just came upon a scripture which enlightened me more about the tabernacles. I'm gonna continue on. You can read the rest of that, but I'm trying not to make this be too long. So with what we know, we're gonna jump back to the pictures, so you can see how it's got the same illustration, the 2 to 1 dimensions and everything like that. And then we're going to continue on. And this is going on the mystery writings that was mentioned just before too. This again is from the Fiji Times, which is like a big newspaper in Fiji. And it says, a cave in the Navosa highlands has writings that are believed to be similar to Hebrew. While no one has any concrete evidence as to who wrote them, villagers believe they were written by their ancestors long before Europeans arrived in Fiji. Kenny Vale, a villager of Nakasayanga in Navosa, claimed that his ancestors used to live in the cave and worship God and keep the 10 Commandments there. Hallelujah. There are more than 10 writings inside the cave. Mr. Vale said his ancestors used to live in the cave, which is part of their old village site. According to Pastor Elisha Ray Jacobs from Central Messianic One Man Ministry from Australia, who knows how to read and preach ancient Hebrew writing, the writings were similar to ancient Hebrew alphabets. And quotes, it says, "This is so interesting that those writings in those caves can be identified and seen for the first time in the highlands of Viti Levu." He said, I can identify these writings, and it seems to be those of ancient Hebrew writing. Mr. Jacobs said he was happy that such evidence could link the Jewish people with the Fijian people. And then this bit below here is going back to that oral history we read in the first part, which talked about how that there was a great storm that struck the Kaunitoni, and then their writing system and all the other stuff got chucked overboard and stuff like that. So by memory, some people would have kept some of the writing alive, but then since they wouldn't have had it consistent enough to teach it to generations, you can tell how it eventually died out over time. But going back to the Bible, you can also see Levi were the scribes that actually were educated to read and write and all that. Like some of the scribes and Pharisees back in Yahushua or Jesus' time, a lot of them were Levites, and back in the day, it was the Levites' job to um, be scribes, write new, copies of the Torah and the Bible and stuff like that, keep writing them, because as you would read a scroll, it would wear out. So those are some people's jobs. And it makes sense of Fijians being from the house of Judah, the tribe of Levi, that they would have the writings, these ancient Hebrew writings. So it makes quite a lot of sense. So jumping to the next tab, it says, I think it's also from the Fijian Times. Point of origin: the voyage across the high seas, Ne clan of Korombembe. So jump down below the picture. It says the reason why I add this oral history is for those Taukei or Fijians who don't believe the Tanganyika oral history, because it disagrees with the quote unquote modern theory that Melanesians and Polynesians come from Southeast Asia, when that theory is lacking in evidence, to say the least. Like, yeah. So when we jump into it onto the right, it says the story is how the Itoke or Fijians people came to inhabit Fiji, initially as a contentious subject. Some accounts tell how the ancestors of the first Fijians, Lutuna Somba Somba and Denge, travelled from Lake Tanganyika in Africa to Fiji. Lake Tanganyika borders Tanzania, the Congo, Burundi, and Zambia. Oral folklore tells of how the Itoke journeyed on a canoe called Kaunitoni before they landed to the north of Visese village in Vunda. The story goes that Lutuna Somba Somba made his home on land near where the canoe berthed, while Denge sailed further up the Viti coast, landed in Raki Raki, and made his home at the Nakauwandra range. Over the years, however, as anthropologists and linguists conducted studies, they suggested that the Lutuna Somba Somba and Denge story was the result of a competition held in the 1870s to develop a more interesting tale rather than fables which were circulating in the country at the time. One theory as to the origins of the Itoke people was that Fiji's first inhabitants were Proto-Polynesians, whose ancestry could be traced back to Southeast Asia. And while we kind of looked into that, and the Polynesians and Pacifica are Israelites, that is just a false theory that doesn't actually have any evidence in it. But going on, it says, whatever experts say, Ratu Marika Saukuru, the chief of the Ne clan in the village of Korombembe, in the district of Sabeto, Nandi, says his ancestors came from Africa. He claimed the Lake Tanganyika story was no fable, and that he put forward some strong arguments backed by historical evidence to support his stance. Our forefathers came here on a boat, and we believe they travelled all the way from Lake Tanganyika, the 65-year-old said. They came in search for a better place to live and to avoid the types of sicknesses that were afflicting their people in Africa. Ratu Marika said, apart from the vivid oral accounts of his forefathers and how these stories had found their way into indigenous music, songs, and culture, there was evidence found in the names of his people. The evidence that our ancestor Captain Kaunitoni can be seen in the names in our clan. He said names linked to the name of the captain were Thalawi, Naulievesi, Natakele, Tiloko, Rokotholo, and Langilolo. During their voyage, conflict arose in their midst, and it happened when the Kaunitoni sailed near some of the smaller islands near the western side of Viti Levu. Even until today, and after asking people who had knowledge of our Even until today, and after asking people who had knowledge of our ancestors' journey, we don't really know what led to their differences and caused the conflict between different parties on board of the vessel. What we do know is that my ancestor and his clan were dropped off at the reef named Thakaoloa and Malolo. They managed to find their way to Malolo, and when they reached there, they decided to settle there. They built houses and lived there. So the ancestors of the people of Koromembe, Vitongo, and Yakete were the ones who were told to leave the boat. Our ancestors stayed in Malolo Island, and they named their village Vanua Levu. After a while, they left the place and sailed across to a place they called Matala Gere, and from there some were dropped off at Namoli. My ancestors moved up to Yakete and dropped the ancestors off the Yakete people, where they remain until today. Ratu Marika said his ancestors left Yakete and stayed on a mountain called Uluine before continuing their journey down the hill to Korombembe. He said they established and developed the village, and the people remained there until today. Ratu Marika's account of his history ran very close to the records kept at the Native Lands Commission. According to the NLC records, 3 siblings lived around a mountain called Ului Ne, and they were described as the Ne clan. These included the Lewe Ndrasa clan, Lewe Koro, Nawatu Levu, and Viangoi Saukova. The records said they all agreed to look after each other and to work together for the sake of their vanua, or their land, and they also pledged allegiance and gave respect to the leader of their siblings, which was the Ne clan. The NLC records also recorded that Lewe Drasa and Lewe Koro families in the Ne clan were now living in Korobembe village. The records show that they used to live at Nandele and lived together with the Rarawaga clan before they left for Vaturu. 3 siblings, Momo Korikwa, Lave or Leva, were the sons of Nayal and Navakayal and Matabiao. The NLC records show that these 4 siblings stayed first at Endronu with Dange on the western side of the Tualeta ancestors pathway, before moving to the valley of Sabeto and staying at Ului Ne. Momo Korekawa moved to Ne, married a woman from Vunamoli, and had 4 sons. The 4th son, Rigwa, moved to Nawaka and stayed there. His clan was Senibua. The rest of his sons stayed at Uluine, and they decided the middle one should lead them. This is why Lave left. He moved to Koromaka, married a Vunamoli woman, and together they had 2 children, and the leadership was given to a young son who stayed near Koromaka, Name Drasa. The descendants of Lave or Leva are now the Lewe Ndrasa, but Matabiao followed the Tualeta. He climbed up the cliff and stayed at the Rai Koro and married a Vitongo woman and had 3 children. The descendants of Matabiao started the Lewe Koro clan to commemorate the place where their ancestors lived before, which was Rai Koro. Alrighty, so apologize for my bad pronunciation here and there, but that was important for me to bring out more for Fijians who live in Fiji. So if you're not Fijian, that might not bear weight and stuff like that, but I believe that's important to bring out to show that it has not only it's the most believed upon oral history of Fijians, but there is a segment of the population that also do not believe that they've been educated by the Kaipalangi and listening to their theories and stuff like that, which meaning no offense in saying that, but the truth is the truth at the end of the day. So then, continuing on the oral histories, is this is origin of the Taukei, Asia or Africa. This is in the Fijian times as well. For hundreds of years, many have argued the origins of indigenous Fijians. Over time, a lot has been written and said about Taukei originating from Africa, while others have argued the case of they being from Asia. Others yet hold firm to the idea of the indigenous being one of the lost tribes of Israel. In addition, research has revealed the story of Lutuna Somba Somba was as a result of a competition by then the colonial government made up to satisfy all queries as were to the indigenous Fijians came from. And what we've known so far and what we're going to go deeper into, we know that's not true. The third paragraph, or fourth paragraph. This article does not intend to contradict any strongly held belief or body of knowledge about the origins of the Taukei or Fijians. Instead, it puts forth another viewpoint that maybe, just maybe, Fijians are linked to one of the lost tribes of Israel. One thing is certain for Lutuna Somba Somba and his family were not the original settlers of Fiji. Where'd it go? There we go. Discoveries have revealed the first settlers were those who we now refer to as the Lapita people. Many may not realize that there were several waves of migration. The Lapita people could have been one and Lutuna Somba Somba another, even others which were not recorded. If the story of Lutuna Somba Somba has been found to be a fabrication, then questions need to be asked. How and where did they come up with the idea? Who assigned the names of the people and places together with the significance of their meaning, which make for an intriguing tale? Growing up, I always have been interested in this topic. When around the Tanoa, I would hear my elders talk about the relationship Fiji may have with the Israelites. What further fueled this interest is a copy of the letter obtained by this newspaper written by a former American consul to Fiji, John B. Williams, to his mother in October 24, 1847, and published in the New Zealand Journal. So we kind of actually read that before, so you can pause that if you want to reread that. I think that was in the first part. But the cool thing is, it's not just in the Fijian times twice, but we see it's also, and not only it's an important person, an American consul to Fiji, but also it's been published in the New Zealand Journal as well, so it's giving more weight, more legitimacy to that claim too. So if we go to the next slide. So then this is where we go into what it says, another theory, and this is on the source of the Fiji Times as well. I believe it's from the same article. And what I do with all of these oral histories is I try to mix them all together, because I believe people are just remembering different parts of the same story with a bit of grain of salt, but I believe it's all pretty much all true. It says, have you seen what the elders do in the house of... let's just start in the first major paragraph. Actually... So that will be some scriptures that it's quoting. I'm gonna start about halfway in, actually. But there's just giving scriptural context. That first half is just giving scriptural context of what's going to be said next. So you can pause and read that if you want. Before time, I'm going to continue on. So in the middle it says, some accounts say Tura, Lutuna Somba Somba's father, was a Levite banished from Israel because of idol worship. Could Tura or one of his ancestors be one of the priests who were banished from the temple and Israel when Hezekiah conducted a cleanup campaign. While more research is needed to confirm this, another similarity between Taukei and Israelites which might help answer this question: Israel had a priest as part of its social structure. There was also a high priest. Melchizedek was a high priest in the Taukei setting. The indigenous hierarchy system also has a priest, or bete, and a high priest, bete level. Like the Israelites, the bete had the same responsibilities to communicate with God on behalf of the people and had the ability to prophesy and foretell. The bete also performed sacred duties in the temple burek kalo. There are other similarities in social structure. Both had a king, chief turanga, messenger, matani vanua, spokesman or warriors, mbati, fisherman, ngonedo, and carpenter, mataiso. So it says here potentially got removed in Hezekiah's reign, or you could say Tura was an idolater just like all of the northern kingdom. So either they got removed in Hezekiah's cleanup, or he got taken in one of the scatterings when the Assyrian Empire came. And they did that for a good 50 years, all the way up into like 722 BCE. So either one or the other doesn't actually contradict when it actually happened. So it could do that, because the Levites were actually in the northern and southern kingdom too. So it could be either one. But the dates where they were actually released, though, tends to actually suit the 70 years that was taken through Nebuchadnezzar taking the Jews into captivity. So I personally believe that they were taken at that point there and not part of the Assyrian captivity. But you could make arguments for both. So go on to the right, it says, with all the information presented, I believe Tura was either banished because he didn't divorce his wife from Thebes. All oral accounts I've seen of this first wife shows that she's from Thebes, most likely being a Gentile. And just like in the book of Ezra, that was a problem for a priest to have a Gentile wife like that. Specifically, if it was from the Aaron's bloodline being of the high priest bloodline. If you're from the high priest bloodline, then you have to marry within your tribe. Then it says, or that when Cyrus released the house of Judah in 536 BC, he walked straight through the land of Israel, knowing Israel was already being knowing already that Israel has been scattered into Africa in 612 BCE, nearly 100 years earlier, like on the map in the next slide. And I'll give you time to pause and read these scriptures here, but I'm also trying not to make these videos like too long, so I want to move to the next slide. So actually, I'm going to stop it here and then segment it out, because we're going to go into the DNA, migrations, culture, and that's going to be a good decent chunk in itself. So jump into the next one when you're ready, and we'll say a big hallelujah.